Greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast, live right now on X as well. So hello to all of you. I am Steve Deace alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. Coming up on today's program next hour. Well, first of all, let me start back to front. The overtime today, we're going to push Pop Culture Tuesday to the overtime for subscribers because we have so much to talk about. We're not going to get to it today. But there's a new movie out right now that I want to warn you about. And this is real. This isn't, mad respect to James Dobson, but the Teletubbies are demonic, probably not his finest hour. Fair, Todd?
Yeah.
And so in a great legacy of service to the kingdom, we're just going to ignore that one. We all have mulligans, right? I mean, we'll have one here on this show probably in the next 5 minutes, okay? And probably 50 by the time we sign off, all right? So no, this is not, hey, there's demonic symbols on the Teletubbies. No, this is not, I played a record backwards. Okay, you remember that stuff from when we were growing up?
Of course.
Okay, I think this is straight up legit. And if your kids are into horror, I want to warn you. All right, this is, I think, one of the best made horror films I've ever seen. It's absolutely the best made horror film I've seen since Hereditary, and that movie was 6 years ago now. It might also be maybe the most demonic film I've ever sat and watched in a theater. It's absolutely one of the darkest. And I'm going to do something in the overtime today. I'm going to spoil a film on purpose because I want you to know what's in it. And I want to make sure people are warned about it. Okay? So we're going to get it. We intended to do that on today's show. Just too much stuff breaking right now. So we're going to have to move Pop Culture Tuesday to the overtime. If you want to become a Blaze TV subscriber so you don't miss it, go to blazetv.com/Deace. You can subscribe there today. blazetv.com/Deace. You'll get a discount when you do become a Blaze TV subscriber. You'll get that and all of the other exclusive content we do every single day right here just for you on Blaze TV. So that's coming up after this show. We'll record that for subscribers. Next hour, we are going to, the reason we're moving Pop Culture Tuesday is we're going to extend Idolatry or Not to a full hour. I made that decision this morning, given the amount of reaction I am getting in my inbox, in my texts, in my feed, to last night's night one of the Republican National Convention. And there are a lot of believers, people close to me in my small group, friends of mine, okay? I mean, just contacts or just, people that love what we do and follow us on social media. This is everywhere in my mentions right now. A lot of confusion about some of the things that they saw last night. And I want to address those things, but maybe not in the way some of you are anticipating. And, I had this, what I think anyway, this prophetic experience in that hospital in Rochester, New York last April. And it was made very clear to me, Stephen, I need apostles and not assassins. Small A, Aaron, don't come at me. Small A. Is that okay? Small A?
Sure.
Small A, okay. Todd doesn't care. Aaron will come after me. From Todd's tradition, he's all for capital A apostles. Aaron will follow me home. All right, so small A, okay, compromise. But I think that it was, to help use our platform to be a vessel of preparation for the era in which we are in, that unfortunately still many churches in America are not awake to. And for pretty much the last generation, with very limited exception. I mean, if you come out of certain Reformed traditions, you've been catechized into preparation for this. But aside from that, the vast majority of Christendom, Protestant or Catholic, has completely and wholly been unprepared for the times in which we are living. And last night at the convention was just one example of that and more of what is to come. And so I want to address that. I also want to address something. I made a joke on the show earlier this year that, well, you guys know one of my favorite Christmas movies is Miracle on 34th Street. You guys know I adore that film, okay? The classic scene at the end, they get Kris Kringle off. Is he really Santa Claus or not, right? They get him off at the end. And, of course, they don't really think he's Santa Claus. They think he's just an adorable dude and a well-meaning codger, and they want to be kind to him in his elderly years, right? And Natalie Wood's little girl starts believing this is really Santa and wants a home in the suburbs where her mom and maybe a family could, be had with a tire swing in the back, right? Okay. And, Christmas Day comes after he's been exonerated and Kris Kringle can't deliver the goods. So he hands them a map on the way home and says, hey, take this route. You'll avoid all the Christmas traffic, back to the city, to Manhattan. Okay. And on the way, they pull in, or they drive to this residential area way out of their way, and Natalie Wood's character says, wait, that's it, right? And makes him stop the car, jumps out, and it's the literal house that she had asked Kris Kringle to give for her mom and her future daddy that her mom's about to marry. And they think this is crazy, right? And they look off in the corner. Remember the last scene? Okay. They look off in the corner, and next to the fireplace is what? Do you guys remember?
No.
The cane, the walking cane that Kris Kringle uses throughout the movie. His cane is there, or at least something that looks like it. And they're like, I don't know, man. Come on. Seriously? Is this real? Okay. I made a joke earlier this year. It was a joke, that if Donald Trump dodged 94 potential felony convictions and still managed to win the presidency, you guys remember what I said? I joked that I'm going to start believing he might actually be God's anointed. It was a joke. Yeah. It was a joke. And it was a joke because I thought there's, at the time, no chance that's going to happen. Okay? Again, I had to clarify small a apostolic for Aaron. Aaron, you stopped me yesterday and said, hey, have you seen this video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is coming from me.
Yeah. This is either the greatest 19-day stretch of political luck in all of human history, or so I'm going to throw something out there. I want us to consider it. I'm going to let you guys check myself before I wreck myself, okay? Because this is just unbelievable stuff. I mean, we couldn't conjure a way for the Democrats to we are incapable of coming up with some kind of issue fight that would divide the Democrats. So they were just like, we good, we'll do it ourselves. We'll get into this more next hour, okay? And again, speaking more to the frustration a lot of you have about what you saw at the RNC last night. At the bottom of this hour, we're going to talk to a young woman that if I were running the RNC, she would have spoken last night instead of the OnlyFans model. You'd have heard her story instead of Amber Rose's. You'd heard about what she has done, the narrow road she's walking as opposed to the slut walk we watched last night. You'd heard from her. Powerful, inspirational story. We want to inspire you with her and her story and her courage. And we're going to do that for a few minutes here coming up at the bottom of the hour. Before we get to Aaron's montage, if you're one of those people frustrated by what the RNC has done with the pro-life planks, don't give them your money then. Donate to individual, strong pro-life candidates, but give that money instead to preborn, because they're doing the Lord's work on the ground anyway to save babies. They are in literal soul-to-soul combat right now with the spirit of the age, confronting moms who are considering the murder of their children with an ultrasound to convict their conscience. And then once their conscience is convicted that, hey, that heartbeat is a separate person, they're there. They are then there with the grace. They are there to support them, provide for them for up to 2 years sometimes after the baby is born. Everything from prenatal to postnatal care to diapers to car seats, mommy training, etc. So it's a fantastic ministry, and that's what we need to beat this, because this is of the unseen realm. And therefore, it's going to take weaponry of the unseen realm in order to defeat it. So if you want to help preborn to do that, you can dial pound 250, say the keyword baby right now, make a tax-deductible donation to them today to make sure they can keep going with this fight, or just go to preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. And with that, here is Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Third Time's the Charm. To open up the Republican National Convention, Donald Trump has officially secured secured the Republican nomination for president for the third time in a row. He's the first American presidential candidate to win his party's nomination 3 times in a row since FDR did it 4 times in a row. He's also attempting to become only the second American president to serve a split term in office since Grover Cleveland in the late 1800s. Of course, the GOP being the GOP. As the Daily Wire's Matt Walsh points out, Trump has just reached mythic status by defying death and surviving assassination attempt, and the GOP decides the next best move was to have him sit and listen to a porn star talk about diversity. Brilliant move. Last night's RNC also featured a prayer to a god named Wahaguru. That's the name of the god. Trump also made his pick for vice president yesterday, announcing Ohio Senator and author of the hit book turned movie Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. Vance, as his running mate. Among those who were rumored to be on his late shortlist, would have been harder to do much better than Vance. Billionaire and ex-Tesla SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, fresh off of endorsing Trump in the aftermath of the attempted assassination, is now saying he's committed to contributing $45 million per month for the duration of the presidential race to a super PAC supporting Trump. This is leaked footage of the hours-long meeting Trump had with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. earlier this week. The two discussed vaccines.
I agree with you, man. Something's wrong with that whole system. And, and it's the doctors you find. Remember I said I want to do small doses. Small doses. When you feed a baby, Bobby, a vaccination that is like 38 different vaccines, and it looks like it's meant for a horse, not a 10-pound or 20-pound baby. It looks like you should be giving a horse this. And do you ever see the size of it, right? It's just massive. And then you see the baby all of a sudden starting to change radically. I've seen it too many times. And then you hear that it doesn't have an impact, right? But you and I talked about that a long time ago. And anyway.
RFK Jr. apologized to Trump today after the video of their private conversation was leaked by his son Bobby Kennedy III. Speaking of RFK Jr., the White House announced yesterday he will now be receiving Secret Service protection for the duration of his campaign. More from the attempted assassination over the weekend. U.S. Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle says that there weren't snipers on the roof of the building that Thomas Matthew Crooks used to attempt his assassination of Donald Trump. There weren't snipers up there because that roof was sloped, and that was a safety concern for said snipers. Yes, really, that's what she said. Yesterday morning, MSNBC took Morning Joe and his co-host Mika Brzezinski off the air. Sources told other media the decision was made to avoid the hosts and their 24 or so strong stable of guests saying something batshit crazy in the aftermath of the attempt on Donald Trump's life. Morning Joe was back on the air this morning and not happy.
We still would like to figure out exactly why there wasn't that one news feed.
And I think the reason why is this show began and continues 17 years later on being the place where you can go to have the hard conversations in a civil way. And so it seemed like now more than ever is a time that we would like to be on. And I think our viewers agree with that. So we continue. We are 5 minutes past the top of the hour.
No, and let me just say, next time we're told there's going to be a news feed replacing us, we will be in our chairs.
We'll be sitting here.
Yeah, and the news feed will be us, or they can get somebody else to host the show.
Elsewhere in the NBC family, Joe Biden was interviewed by Lester Holt.
If you were to continue to run and be officially nominated, what happens if you have another episode like we saw during the debate?
What happens if another?
Yeah, what happens if you have another performance on that level?
I don't plan on having another performance on that level.
And finally, music to our ears. Here's Glitch McConnell getting booed at the Republican National Convention.
Madam Chairman, the Commonwealth of Kentucky proudly cast 46 votes for the next president, Donald J. Trump.
And that's what happened while we were away.
I got to tell you, if it's not all bad, McConnell getting booed like that, Tucker Carlson this morning coming off the top rope and just absolutely driving the Jimmy Superfly Snuka, actually from the top of the steel cage, Superfly Snuka elbow into the ribs of Lindsey Graham. I'll allow it. I'm totally here for all of that. Completely supportive of that. Aaron's Montage brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. I spoke over at the Family Leadership Summit on Friday. Patriot Mobile was one of the sponsors there. I spoke at the conference for Christian filmmakers put on by Kevin Sorbo in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee a month ago. Patriot Mobile was one of the sponsors there. I keep telling you, I can't think of a time I have gone or been invited to speak at a conference somewhere on the right that Patriot Mobile has not been one of the sponsors to make it happen. And so when we tell you they take your profits that you give them and they reinvest them back into the kingdom work, we are not lying. I mean, I've seen it with my own eyes. So, but make the switch not just for that. Do it because it's a fantastic product. They'll give you access to all the major networks out there that you can switch anytime you need to. If you're moving or something changes with your signal strength, you can change it anytime you want. They've got an outstanding customer service team. When you go to make the switch from your provider to Patriot Mobile, they'll customize it as best they can. Keep your phone, upgrade your phone, keep your number, switch your number, whatever you want to do. Don't get fooled by other providers pretending to share your values or having the same coverage. They can't beat Patriot Mobile. So today, go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. When you do, you'll get a free month when you use the offer code Steve. So see it for yourself with a free month with the offer code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. All right, I want to spend most of my time here talking about J.D. Vance because we'll get into some of the other convention stuff next hour. But very quickly, your thoughts on that conversation. RFK Jr. has apologized, said that he had no idea a videographer was still recording when this call was happening. Okay, that's how this got out through his son. But that does not seem, I mean, I've seen Trump is the consummate salesman. So I've had conversations with him and seen him where he's looking for the entry point to make that connection. Okay. There seemed to be, at least to me, some level of thought that he has put into this, not just hey, Bobby, hope you're doing great. You know, I'd love to, have your support and we'll take a look at some of your issues and talk to you later kind of a thing. Okay. Pat on the back. That looked to me like someone that is at least, someone has brought some issues to his attention that he's at least mildly curious about or has discovered enough to at least have a conversation with kind of the Godfather about it.
Well, so much has gone on in the last few years. But listen, and you've readily admitted that pre-COVID, while you knew my stances on vaccination, you had other fish to fry. That describes most people. I totally understand it. This is a Donald Trump I'm familiar with pre-COVID. And maybe I'm refreshing your memory, but Donald Trump had opinions on vaccination that before we knew what a COVID was, and this was him. He had serious questions, and there were some rumors that it had to do. Now I don't know anything about this specifically, but the rumors that it may have or may not have had something to do with Barron and if he was mildly autistic or not, it doesn't matter. Donald Trump has thought this very thing about the broader vaccination schedule. He mentioned, 38 vaccines, and then you multiply that by the number of boosters, et cetera. That's now the number gets over to 70. Mm-hmm. This is not new.
Well, yeah, and you heard Trump say that there is, we've talked about this before. So that's obviously a conversation they've had in the past. The irony here is that the guy who leaked this, who is RFK Jr.'s son, Bobby Kennedy III, I think that is, the guy who leaked this, he also blasted Trump and said, hey, these conversations need to happen in public. Yeah, you're right. They do. So at least on some level, there is awareness there. There is trepidation and skepticism on the part of Trump. I think that's good news. Didn't necessarily gloss over that. But I think Bobby Kennedy III is correct. Those conversations got to take place in public.
So let's get to the selection of J.D. Vance, which came down about 2 hours after we got off the air yesterday, he had been long discussed as the likely nominee for Donald Trump for his running mate. And I want to clear up a couple of misconceptions and pass on. I don't know J.D. Vance at all. Okay. I've liked a lot of what he's had to say since he emerged as a political entity. In fact, I shared some of his initial thoughts on Donald Trump many, many years ago less than a decade ago, when he shared some of those as well. I didn't quite go to the Hitler card as he once did, but I had many of the same reservations that he did. Okay. On the other hand, also saw when he became president, he did a much better job than I thought he was going to do. And I'm like, okay, again, still not the way I do things or necessarily who I would choose, but I'm into results. That's, I don't care, man, if it's J.D. Vance, Beggar Vance, Donald Trump, Shirley Frump, Ron DeSantis, your mom's an Antis, a praying mantis. I don't care. I got people I like, people I don't like. I'm human, I've got things I prefer and ways that I like things done, or people I like doing things through, but more than others. But ultimately, man, I just want to see results. We're all sinners, and I'm a big believer in the plaque that Reagan had on his desk in the West Wing. It's a miracle which you're able to accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit for it. So I'm for the name on the front of the jersey, America. Okay, then the name on the back. Okay, I don't really care.
This is the exact point I was trying to make when I said narcissism is not the same thing as principles.
That's because here's the thing: we're all broken vessels, man. We all are. So it's just a matter of whether the brokenness of your vessel gets in the way of mine being made, being put back together again. All right. So I've liked a lot of what he said. He's been a fixture on Tucker Carlson's show. That's how a lot of us got to know him, aside from his work with Hillbilly Elegy, as Aaron mentioned. A few things on this. I want to clear up some misconceptions and some things I have learned. I've talked to several people whose opinions I respect. People who supported DeSantis over Trump in the primary, like our friend Josh Hammer. People who were still not completely on board with Trump post-primary, like Dave Reboy at the Claremont. Freaking love J.D. Vance. They love him. Daniel Horowitz gave an endorsement yesterday. Well, the best Trump could have probably done. That's the closest you're going to get. Fair.
That's a parade from Daniel, really.
That's the best you're going to get. All right. Now, I criticized. Don't take it back because I think it was the right criticism. His remarks on the abortion drug 2 Sundays ago on Meet the Press, I think it was one of those Sunday shows. I found them to be abhorrent. But I will tell you, I checked in with my good buddy Bob Vanderplatz, and I said, hey, can you ask your counterpart in Ohio what he thinks of Vance? And his counterpart in Ohio gave, an enthusiastic endorsement. I shared his wording, his exact wording on all my social media accounts, but essentially said, listen, I've seen this guy take tough stances when all the forces told him not to. I will tell you, privately, the conversation about his abortion drug comments did come up. That was an off the record part of our conversation, so I'm not going to share that. Okay, but I put out that guy's endorsement from the Center for Christian Virtue in Ohio, gave J.D. Vance a ringing endorsement from what they have seen thus far. So we shall see. But maybe I want to correct 2 things. You might be hearing that Vance said we should get rid of fire the nurses who won't obey the vaccines. This stuff went around yesterday, including from some accounts, frankly, that I like and we were on the same side of during the primary. No. That we're not going to do any more Loomer level out of context toxic sludge. We're not going to gaslight our own team. You can't gaslight your own team. You know what I'm saying? Don't do that.
Well, full disclosure, I was gathering a lot of information, putting it out there as Deace Online, getting as many takes as possible about this. And I read it so fast, and I honestly don't remember his takes on this. I retweeted it, went away 10 minutes later. People brought it to my attention, and I apologized and took it down. So, but Steve is right.
That's fine.
A lot of people thought this was real.
And there are people still
and wanted it. Here's the thing. Want it to be real. Want it to be real. And that's, again, your narcissism is not a substitute for being principled, okay? We all do ready, fire, aim in this world. We, especially working in this arena, we have to react to things all the time. We don't have time to fact check everything. I put something out over the weekend, and a buddy of mine said, hey, actually my pastor came to me and said, I looked into it, that's a scam. I said, thanks, I took it down, okay? So we're going to have to do that to one another all of the time, all right? But what I mean by loomering things is putting things out there that are negative about people that are not true, but you want them to be.
Exactly.
Not making mistakes, okay? Not misreading a situation and having to correct something or delete a tweet or correct, a statement you made in your show, but that you put negative things out there about people that aren't in your group or faction or whatever, and you want them to be true, even if they're not. That's what I mean by lumering. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There were plenty of people too many people who wanted the worst of J.D. Vance from the outset. They were looking for it, okay? Nope, not doing that. Not on this show. We're not doing that. Dude, if you screw up and we think that you're on the wrong side of history, we'll tell you. But we're not rooting for you to fail, okay? Christians don't do that. Christians, we are the thou art the man people, okay? But then when we are also the well done, good and faithful servant people. You know what I'm saying? We're not rooting for people to fail. We're not sitting around just, that's Pharisee. That's where you get Pharisaical. I'm looking for the thing that you're wrong about, and I can't wait to pounce on that. Okay? We're all going to make mistakes. Like you said, I made one a few days ago. You got to correct it. Cool, move on. All right? But no, that stuff was all done sarcastically. He was an adamant opponent of vaccine mandates the entire time. And credit to Christina Pushoff from the DeSantis camp, by the way, for pointing that out and coming to his defense almost right away. Secondly, here's what I believe this appointment of J.D. Vance is about. I know there's been talk that Vance has ties to Peter Thiel and other people. Donald Trump's a billionaire. Basically almost everybody that Trump would have picked for a nominee has ties to billionaires. Okay, Doug Burgum has ties to billionaires, maybe one himself. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, this is about politics, but it's not about money. Well, it is about money, but not about this campaign. I keep telling you guys, because he's been aligned with us, the Trump family's status as global financiers and tycoons is over. They're excommunicated. Politics will be the family business moving forward. Now, that doesn't necessarily, have I even criticized that? That's just an observation. It's not even a judgment.
Right.
That's just the reality, okay? That they cannot return to the world they came from. They won't let them in. They won't let them back. They've been shunned, exiled. So we're their people moving forward, basically, whether we like it or not, okay? So this is about, you know what? I'll just say it. Ron DeSantis was supposed to be this pick. And the entire plan was to move the entire operation of social media influencers and everything over to the most based governor in America. He chose to challenge President Trump in the primary, which we supported, okay?
Absolutely. But
he chose to do that, which created a rift there. When they said, when you heard Trump loyalists on social media saying that DeSantis should have waited his turn, he's disloyal, this is what they meant, okay? What they meant was he was the heir to the throne. He was to assume this, okay? So that this could last, this anti-establishment insurgency, and whether it is one, we debate that some days or not, okay? But that's what many of the people think it is, right? Yeah. And he was to inherit that. He chose to challenge the king instead, and so that created a rift, and that therefore required someone who could replace that, fill that void. That's not, people who have whose agendas line up with the president's and have held some form of political office at a high level. That's not a long list. So Vance is the replacement for that. And Vance is the opportunity for, this also shows you, and some of you may love this and be comforted by it. This also shows you that Tucker Carlson and Don Jr. are wielding a lot of influence in Trump's camp. The Gen Xers that are like, all right, what's the next era here to move on? How do we, King Trump is 78. Okay, even if he does win, this is a one-term thing. How do we not permit the Mitch McConnell wing to return to power? All right, and they're moving and maneuvering for that. That J.D. Vance is now meant to carry that torch into the future, and that's what that tells you. There's not a coincidence. Tucker sitting right next to Trump in the box last night. I mean, he's got the king's ear. And so him and Don Jr. are tight, and they're all tight with JD. This was about securing the future of the movement and/or industry. That's what it was about. And with a guy who has demonstrated, by the way, he is a very effective communicator. Again, whether you like him or not, he's a pretty devastating communicator. He'll do great in that role.
I'm told Kamala's going to wipe the floor with him, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things I saw these people say last night, I just blew my mind. Okay? I mean, he is, I do communicating for a living. I train people to communicate for a living. He's a devastating communicator. He'll do excellent in that job. So that's what this is really about. It's really about continuing on this heritage and legacy after Donald Trump is gone. That's what it's about. In many respects, you could call J.D. Vance the apprentice. All right, welcome back here to the Steve Deace Show here on The Blaze. Also live right now on X/Twitter. Do we just call it Twitter X? Someone suggested we do that.
I believe it's Amy Coney Barrett in official SCOTUS briefings and decisions is calling it Twitter still. So I'll defer to her.
Another questionable decision she's made. Yes. All right. So speaking of questionable decisions, I know my inbox is fried. Okay, it's funny. My inbox, my text messages from friends I have around the country, people I know, friends, family, everyone was, beyond fired up from the clenched fist and the blood-soaked head as Trump screams out "fight" on Saturday. Last night, a lot of those exact same people, and on into my feed this morning, not as excited by some of the things they saw at the RNC convention last night, some of the speaker choices, okay? So this is providential timing. I wrote a column about the story that you're about to hear for The Blaze a couple of months ago. We've been working on having the subject of that column with us here in the studio for quite some time to come up with a time that worked. It's just providential that it happens the morning after. This is the kind of discussion that I think, if I were running the show, this is the kind of discussion I think that I would have used that platform for America to hear, are stories like this. Because this is right on the front lines of the spiritual battle that's happening in America today. And I hope after the next 15 minutes or so that all of you walk away fired up again and inspired again as we welcome Ariella Krause to the show. It is a pleasure to have you with us. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's a pleasure to be here.
And you're a senior in high school. You're going into your senior year like
yes.
My son is.
Yep.
Okay. And you have an incredible story. And so... but first I need to find out, because I understand you are a fellow superhero geek nerd like I am. I understand this. Is
yes.
this true? All right.
Yes.
So first I need to find out whether how qualified you are to be a nerd. All right. Are you as excited about the release? It's almost exactly 1 year from right now. James Gunn is rebooting Superman in the DC universe. Are you as excited about that as I am?
My dad's probably more excited than I am. I'm more of a Marvel person.
That stung. That's a nice way of saying, well, I guess, okay, boomer. Yes, even though I'm not even a boomer. All right. But yeah. So now I feel a lot older. Okay. I respect the subtle sarcasm there. Yeah. My dad is. He's ancient. So yeah, he likes it too. Yeah. All right. So.
Told you you'd like her.
Yes. All right. So with that all said, I just want to open the forum. I want you to tell your story.
So I'm a detransitioner. I was about 10 when the ideology was sort of pushed onto me to start, and it actually started with a friend group and like teachers and online stuff. So I would have been like 6th grade, and
6th grade, and people were like, I was like insecure with my body, as most like girls are in middle school, and so I told my friends at the time about this, and they're like, oh, maybe you are just in the wrong body. And so I believed them because I trusted my friends. Most middle schoolers are very reliant on their friends, and so I just took their advice. They were telling me, like, look up these influencers who are, like transgender and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I kind of want to be a boy. That might be interesting. So I would like shop for like boyish clothes. And at one point my mom gave in and bought me like a binder because I convinced her I was going to use it for like cosplay and stuff because I like to do that. And, which would be believable given your superhero love and kind of, nerd status. Cosplay is kind of inherent to that subculture. Yeah.
But I ended up using it for more than that. And I mean, I've got like, I keep pictures on my phone from this, but I like I'd cut my hair short and stuff. And I actually at one point had teachers who told me, like there was one specific teacher who told me that I looked better as a boy and with short hair. And he actively encouraged me to like make art that was of like, hey, express the fact that you're bisexual by creating naked people. And, you know, he encouraged me to break school rules, like wearing short wigs to school and stuff before I like fully cut my hair. So. And
you're in this entire time, you're a minor.
Yes,
you're a child.
Around 10 or 11, around that time. And it kind of just progressed through middle school. It got worse. I, at one point, was very suicidal. And, like, I tried to end my life quite a few times. And around, like, high school, I think it was the end of freshman year, going into sophomore year, I was in a relationship with a transgender Satanist. She was a girl. She told me that, you know, you're totally fine to do all these things, and, you know, God is wrong. God, you know, he kicked Satan out of heaven for no reason, and all this ridiculousness. And like I was blinded by lust, because that's really what it is. It's not love like they preach it, like love is love. It's not. It's just lust, because by their by how they view things, it's you're focused on their body, not who they are. And there was one point where I was just like at my lowest because this girl had like convinced me that like she was all these amazing things and then kept letting me down. That I was just like, I cried out to God one night. I was like, there's no hope for me at this point. I mean, I don't want to be here anymore. If you like, God, if you don't prove that you're real or show yourself to me, I'm going to kill myself then like tomorrow. And that night I actually had a dream, and the dream was, in the dream there were two fields, and they were like cut like perfectly across in the middle. And one field, the field I was standing on, was like barren, like cracked, dry ground. There was a dead tree, and that was it. And on the other side there was like this light, and it was God, I could tell. And around him was like, it was flourishing, like the grass was green. There was a lot of like plants that like resembled the Garden of Eden. And he very specifically told me that, you know, you're perfect the way that I like designed you in your mother's womb, and like there's nothing wrong with you despite what the world is telling you. And that morning I woke up, I just like, I cried. And when I went to school, like I immediately ended the relationship. And when she asked me why, I said, well, I don't know, I just feel like it's not where I'm supposed to be. I feel like I'm learning things about God. And 2 weeks later I got baptized. So yeah.
That's incredible. And forgive me, I've got 2 daughters myself. They're not that much older than you. So I've got this urge, like a daddy urge, just to come over and give you a big hug hearing this, okay? But how have things changed for you, both yourself and what you think now about yourself and how you feel about you, but then also at school since this?
At school, I find it easier to be more forgiving now, and I'm like not hold grudges despite, you know, these people who are, you know, trying to destroy my life. And it's going to be better now because
their like definition of tolerance isn't quite what the dictionary definition is.
No.
Yeah.
It's only tolerance if you agree with them. And then like on grounds with just like me, I haven't been depressed in quite a while, like to the point where it's been consistent and awful. And yeah, it's just been so much better for me. I finally have a place to turn to when I feel like there's nobody I can talk to, because, you know, God's always there for us, and we don't have to worry about really, well, there's still going to be conflict even if you are Christian, but you have to, you know, trust in him because he has a plan for you. So
now do you sense a desire to help other young people that were falling into the pit that you were in, and to help them out the way that God helped you out of that pit.
Yeah, because I feel like I can see a lot of things that I couldn't see when I was blinded by this ideology that they, put in your face and say, oh, this is like the Holy Grail. This is going to, fix your life. You're going to be great. Because a lot of like these kids are coming from broken homes or depression or anxiety, and they're looking for a way out of it or a way to feel better. And that's what these people are promising them. So if you give them another option, they might be mad at you. Like at first, like my parents were constantly giving me like we're not going to call you that because we named you your name for a very specific reason, because my name means lioness or lion of God. And so they wouldn't call me that, like the name that I chose. They wouldn't refer to me as a male. And so we just have to be like firm on it. It's about consistency.
You talked about the influence social media had on you, and I've discussed a standing theory on this show many times that I think a lot of cases like what you almost fell into comes from social media is now in many cases the peer group for young people.
Yeah.
Okay, and any boy who tells you they never noticed another boy's nakedness in the high school gym locker room is lying to you. We all look, okay? But in our era and generation, it wasn't socially acceptable to talk about that. So you may look, but like you weren't going to go like tell and blab to people about it because people would think you were weird, and they, so some of that kind of policed a little bit of that. It was a phase. You grow out of it and you just move on with your life. You see what I'm saying? In your era, it is encouraged now to express literally everything going on in your lives in a very public fashion.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many young people fall into this pit because that's their peer group. And they don't feel like they could have these conversations with the church or their parents or others. And so because some of it is they don't want to be told they're wrong, as you just pointed out. And so affirm me that I'm okay and that I don't have to change anything. I jump online, I make a TikTok video, a bunch of people jump in my feed and say, well, sounds like maybe you're a girl trapped in a boy's body or something, right? And you don't want to push against that because then they'll be like, well, there's nothing wrong with it. Are you a bigot or something? And now you risk being shunned. And that momentum kind of gets going, and the next thing, and you can't ever say no. You see what I'm saying? Because that faucet kind of gets turned on. It's hard to turn that off. Is that what is happening a lot in your generation?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times kids are turning to social media, and I think more than social media, I feel like it's the actual people who are behind the profiles who are reaching out to these people. When I was 13, I had a 17-year-old reach out to me.
So grooming.
Yeah. And he basically he wanted to see parts of me. He was into like the whole gender change stuff, and he thought it was, he like fetishized it. And there were a lot of people like that. Like I had adults messaging me, and I don't think these kids realize that like that's not okay, because that they're being set up to be groomed, basically, is what's happening.
So we've got about 3 minutes. I want you to give some encouragement, advice to parents in this situation, but also to the church, and what the church could do here collectively as an entity to provide the support that instead of the false versions of it that kids like you were struggling and finding online. What would you say to both the church and to parents?
I'd say for parents, be honest with your kids. Don't give in to their demands. By leniency, we're giving them a way to fall deeper into this hole that they're digging themselves. So, do like what my parents did. Don't call them by whatever name they want. Don't, because you gave them their identity, and God gave them their identity for a very specific reason. So you gave them their name for a reason, and God gave them who they were born as for a reason. So don't help them change that, because then you're denying and basically saying, well, God messed up, and God doesn't make mistakes. He does everything with purpose. So I'd say the same for churches. Don't give in to whatever demands these people are giving you. Stay firm on biblical grounds. There are many places in the Bible where it actually talks about gender change. One is in Deuteronomy. It says that if you crush your testicles or cut off your penis, you will not be welcome into the assembly of God. And it's one of the laws of Judaism, actually. And I just read the Bible, honestly, because the Bible tells you so many places and so many rules that we have in order to, honor God. And we are not honoring God by just swiping things under the rug and trying to make people happy. We should be striving to make, God happy and glorify him.
How old are you again?
17.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good for 17. How before we let you go, how can people, we got a lot of prayer warriors in our audience. How can our audience, prayer warriors in our audience, Ariella, how can they pray for you? I would like prayer for strength this coming year. I'm probably only going to be doing half of the year this year for high school, trying to graduate early, just because of pushback I've gotten from all of the kids and teachers and stuff. So just strength and the will to power through all of the pushback that's going to come with it, and possibly the poor grades that are going to be handed out because of it. So, Todd and Aaron, you got last 90 seconds. You guys have something you want to say to Ariella? Give her some encouragement. Respond.
Well, I'm proud of you. I was involved in something in my life where I was accused of things, and ultimately at the end, after I had to tell my story over and over and over again, somebody told me at the end, we believe you because your story is the same every single time. You just gave testimony to these people when I met you the first time. It's the same thing. You're not trying to sell anybody anything other than the good, the true, and the beautiful. And for that, it is an honor and a privilege to know you.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's just a privilege, like Todd said, to hear your testimony, to hear your story, and not only the authenticity, but the strength that you're showing, and getting out there and telling your story as well. You've already lived a lifetime of heartbreaking experience, even at your age, and it's a testimony of God's goodness and faithfulness, and that more than anything is an inspiration to hear. So thank you for your courage in speaking up, and continue to do so. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Amen. I just want to echo what they would say, and you're in the race, and now the goal is to finish that race, and your maturity is way beyond your years. Your understanding of what lays ahead of you and anticipation of it is crucial, because a lot of believers are not used to, particularly the older generations, are used to being in the majority. They're not used to having the system aligned against them, and you're already well prepared for that. All right, so know that we're here to support you anytime we can, and God bless you, okay?
Yeah, God bless you too.
All right, we'll come back. More here on The Blaze, and also live on Twitter in a moment. Wow. Back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Also on X, live right now as well. I must confess, I know I mentioned it on the air, but during the break, I had to give Ariella a daddy hug. I mean, what an incredible story that was. And necessary, and a story that America needs to hear. Okay? They don't need to hear from Amber Rose. Amber Rose needs to hear from Ariella. That's what needs to happen. Amber Rose needs to hear from her. Okay.
Real courage. Every day.
Yep.
Has fellow students against her, has faculty against her. She can't escape, but she endures. And meanwhile, the excuses we give ourselves to not be in the fight. Come on.
What you just said there. Wow. We cannot escape. We have to endure. That is going to be a major theme of what we're about to discuss. That's a heck of a segue. But first, let us know what you think about what we think. via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can do that, Steve at stevedeace.com. You can like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. We also had to just start a brand new YouTube channel. We just had too much censorship on our other channel. We were just getting throttled all the time. Stuff wasn't being seen. Okay? I mean, there's accounts, shows that don't have close to the audience we do, that have hundreds of thousands of YouTube subscribers. We had tens of thousands. I mean, Aaron, you and I do like a little Big Ten sports show on the side for fun every other week. It gets more views than we get per episode on YouTube with this show, for goodness sakes, man. Okay?
Despite having, our show had twice as many subscribers.
Correct. It's inexcusable. So we just decided to try to see if maybe we could hit the Control-Alt-Delete button and just reboot the entire thing. We started a brand new YouTube channel yesterday. If you go and subscribe and share it, we'd appreciate it. At Deace Show on YouTube now. At Deace Show on YouTube is where you can find us now. If you want a good night's sleep, particularly in the summertime, you could find that with our friends over at Miracle Made. Their sheets, inspired by NASA, use silver-infused fabrics that are temperature regulating, so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. And we brought these on the show last year, and then shortly thereafter, we had one of the worst heat waves in Iowa history, and these sheets were incredible. We just had a huge heat wave in Iowa. It just dissipated over the weekend. Incredible again. I still have yet, since we bought these Miracle Maids, I have still, or they gave us the Miracle Maids. Then we went and bought more, by the way. But since they gave us these Miracle Maids to try, then we liked them so much we've gone and bought more. Since we started using Miracle Maid, we still have not turned the ceiling fan on to augment the AC and the central air in the house one time. They're luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of the luxury brands as well. So you can try them today at trymiracle.com/Deace. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift, if you order today, you can save over 40% off. And if you use our promo Deace at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. So you can't beat it, folks. Huge savings at trymiracle.com, discount code Deace. Trymiracle.com, discount code Deace. All right, I want to spend this whole hour in the overtime. I teased it earlier. We're going to get to a film I want to warn you against seeing. I don't think I've ever done that before on our show, by the way. And it's precisely because it is so well done. And the subject matter, I want to warn you against seeing it and against other people seeing it. And I'm going to get into it. And then Todd and Aaron, you guys can tell me in the overtime if you think I'm overreacting based on what I tell you.
Got it.
And if you are, cool. Okay? I want to hear that. Because if anything, I get attacked. Attack's a wrong word. That's kind of a wimpy take on my part. If anything, I get criticized. Is that fair? Okay, attacked is I'm not attacked. Okay, I get paid well to stand up for what I believe in, and the standard of when I'm attacked should be a lot higher than 20 people emailed me. Fair? Okay, sure. That was soft. Forgive me. All right. I often get criticized more so on the grounds that I'm too lenient when it comes to what I'm willing to culturally absorb. Fair?
Yeah.
So in all the years you guys have known me and or been on this show, how many times have I come on here and said specifically, I just watched something and I don't think people should see it because I think it's that dark. Maybe it's happened before. I don't know when that's occurred off the top of my head.
Yeah, if you tell people not to see something, you just because it sucks.
Yeah, that's usually it. That should give you an indication of how dark I think this movie is. Okay, and so we're going to talk about it in the overtime today because we're going to spend the entire hour here on 2 different iterations of idolatry or not. All right. And I made the executive decision this morning to tackle this one. I've alluded to it a few times already during today's show, based on the volume of reaction that I am getting. Ministry contacts and people I know around the country, friends of mine personally, political contacts, okay? Just, you folks who love our work and follow what we do, just what I'm hearing from you in my inbox on, whether it's in social media or via email, there's a lot of confusion and or frustration about what was seen at the RNC last night with Amber Rose, also with Harmeet Dillon, who, by the way, is one of the most respected Republican attorneys on the right. Many of us, myself included, preferred her for RNC chair over Ron DeSantis, many others preferred her over Ronna Romney McDaniel for RNC chair. Okay, so she's very capable and well respected at her job. All right, and she gave a Sikh prayer last night at the RNC convention. And so there's a lot of confusion to frustration about this. I want to spend some time addressing this, but maybe not the way you're thinking. I want to prepare you for more of this. I want to prepare you for more of this. Because no one can rise above, no one can. No one can rise above their own worldview. No one can. No culture, therefore, can. If no single individual can, then no pluralistic culture can do the same. All right? And so I want us, as best as I can, as I'm capable, I want to explain and help prepare you for the world we're in now and what that means, what's to come. Okay? First, I think, we've always, when we start with an argument, we got to set the premise. The premise must be established. So I want to start there. I think we have to begin with the premise that we are in a post-Christian America. Which, by the way, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but for now, I'll mention, if we're in a post-Christian America, it also means we're in a post-conservative America, and also we're in a post-Constitution America. Because those are things that stem from our ethical system, our value system. So was it Richard Dawkins who said he doesn't want to, he still thinks, Jesus is for fools, but he misses Christian culture? Didn't he say that a few months ago?
Yeah.
All right, this idea that we're going to have a Christian culture without Christ, no, you won't. Or, now, Steve, you can't legislate morality. Actually, it's the only thing you can legislate. Every piece of legislation is moral. But you can legislate morality, but that's not the same as making people moral. You see what I'm saying? We cannot do that. All right? We can put guardrails up through legislation or laws that make people second guess whether they really want to commit an immoral act because they don't want to pay the price for it, right? Okay? But is there a set of civic laws that are so perfect we could enact that people would stop doing imperfect things? No. Right? So legislating morality is not the same as causing morality. Not the same thing. We can't cause people to be moral with laws, but we can absolutely legislate morality, and every piece of legislation is moral. All right? But in a post-Christian culture, these definitions are now completely up for grabs. When Todd and I's Generation X were growing up, we were told all the time 85, 90% of Americans, now the number's like 70-something%, view themselves to be Christians. What that really meant is that Christianity was still in a position of hegemony or dominance in the culture. And so just like you can't legislate morality, I can't legislate Christianity. Or I'm sorry, just like I can't make someone more with legislation, I can't make someone Christian with a culture. You see what I'm saying? That is a one-on-one exchange of your life for the hope of glory, Christ in you. That's a one-on-one exchange that happens, okay? But we can create a culture that is so influenced by Christianity that people will abide by its customs even if they themselves haven't embraced it internally. That's what those high numbers meant. So we have to begin with the premise that we're in a post-Christian America. And here's what that means. It means the world is negative against Christianity now. When Todd and I's Gen X were leaving the government schools, we were on the tail end of, you were still singing Silent Night and Joy to the World at public school Christmas celebrations. It was still referred to as Christmas break, okay?
I've been with you 10 years. But before that, I was at the Des Moines Register for 12. And when I started at the Register, when you were there, you left the year before I started, they were printing the nativity story.
Correct. On the front page every Christmas morning, perennially as a tradition. Right. Well, they don't do that anymore. Okay. So so Gen X has seen this transition from positive world to now a neutral world. Okay. And a neutral world meant that it's up for grabs. And it's still okay institutionally to acknowledge Christianity, but it's not okay to exclusively acknowledge Christianity. No one was ever martyred for worshiping Jesus. No one ever in the history of the church. People are martyred for only worshiping Jesus. No Caesar went to anybody and said, you can't worship Jesus. He said, you must worship and bow down to me. If Polycarp had worshipped the Caesar right alongside with Jesus, they wouldn't have put him on a funeral pyre, guys, and lit him on fire. It's for only worshiping Jesus. See, a neutral world is short-lived, which is why even in our generation that hasn't even come close to running its course yet, we have already seen neutral world come and go. Because nothing can be neutral. Neutral is a destabilization until the next thing that will take that place fills that vacuum. And it must happen fast. Why? Because of the way the creation is created. Something will always rule. Something must always be worshipped. Unavoidable. Metaphysical truths, iron laws of the universe. Unavoidable. Something must always rule. Something will always be worshipped. So the neutral world, when we were leaving public school, the neutral world came in. By the time our kids were entering public school within a decade or two, Christianity was gone. We went from neutral to opposed. Neutral never lasts. Now, this was a quick deceleration. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it takes longer, but it will never take longer than one generation. Because something will always rule, something must always be worshipped. Neutral world doesn't last. It's a lie. So shortly thereafter, and usually very shortly, negative world arrives, which is where we are now. Now there is no benefit of the doubt given anywhere outside of your subculture and enclave of fellow believers that you are given in American culture as a Christian. No place. It's negative now. Now I need to make this, there's two things that are unique about this. Number one, it's almost always been a negative world for Christianity, or at least some vestige of Christianity for a millennia and a half until the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock and started this country. There were periods, like post-Constantine Rome, for example, where Christianity was now in a positive world. But then there were other periods, there were periods as well. The founding of Western civilization via the Catholic Church, where Christianity was in a positive world. Now that came about, though, because Muslims were invading, so they had to save themselves from another negative world, okay? Post-Reformation, if you were a Christian in a positive or negative world depended on what side of this divide the monarchy was. If you were a Protestant in a Catholic country, you were not in a positive world. And if you were a Protestant or a Catholic in a Protestant country, you absolutely weren't. It has been extremely rare, except for a few brief periods in Rome and during the forming of the Holy Roman Empire during the Middle Ages, which is basically the dawn of Western civilization. Correct me if I'm wrong on that history, Todd, but I think it's generally close enough. Fair? Okay. Yeah. Outside of those two eras, this world has never been positive world for Christianity, comprehensively. And then post-Reformation until the founding of this country, it was positive world if you were in the right sect of Christianity. Negative world if you were not. Then this country comes along. And unless you were black until about 50 years ago and a Christian, you've lived in a positive world this entire time. But here's the thing, too. If you were living in a negative world because you were a black believer in America, it wasn't because of your beliefs. It was because of the color of your skin. So even that negative world was different than the other negative worlds, right? Like no one was saying, hey, we did not lynch black people for believing in Jesus in the South. We lynched black people for being black. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't based on your love of the Lord. It was on the color of your skin. So that negative world is still not the same as the negative world that was largely faced by Christendom for 2,000 years, which we are now facing in America in a post-Christian culture. Secondly, this will be the most unique negative world we've ever seen because you actually still have many of the accoutrements of liberty that are still left over from positive world. We're not in control of any meaningful institution in the culture right now, not even the church, frankly. The church is, even within the church, there's a remnant of people who are spirit-filled and are interested in actually, onward Christian soldier that know what time it is, all right? We're not in control of any institution anywhere. But yet, despite that, It's changing, but still for the most part, if I want to go somewhere and say to government, which is king, Jane, you ignorant slut, I can say it freely. Not as freely as I could 10 years ago. But in most negative worlds, you can't say that at all. Otherwise, here's your cross, right? And so that's going to kind of fool us into thinking we have more influence than we really do. Doesn't mean, did I say we have no influence? No. But we don't have as much as we think. We're not even a silent majority. We're not even a plurality. We're a significant faction, is how I would define it. One of the largest factions, but still now just a faction. And when you have a negative world, what will happen is two things will emerge in a negative world. And these will be the twin pressures on Christians. One will be outright forms of paganism. Government is God, occult practices, things of that nature, outright paganism. Aberrant religious views, and we won't be tolerant of your Christianity. You have to set your Christianity aside in order to join this. The other will be what's called syncretism. And it will be, well, Christianity can just fit alongside everything else. Which is why I just said a minute ago, no one was ever martyred for worshiping Jesus. Everyone was martyred for only worshiping Jesus. Because sooner or later, there are things Christians we can syncretize with, right? Mm-hmm. But sooner or later, the syncretist will bring us something we can't syncretize with, and they'll turn into pagans at that point real quick. Like, they don't ever just say, oh, yeah, okay, we understand. No, they don't. Right? And that's inevitably where this is going to go. How long it will take, I don't know. But without revival, it's where it will go. So if you understand that we are a post-Christian America and thus in a negative world, then literally everything, and I mean everything that you are seeing culturally and especially politically will begin to make sense to you. That doesn't mean you'll like it. In fact, if you're a true Spirit-filled believer, you should probably not like much of it. But you'll understand it. You'll understand the signs of the times and therefore what to do about them. And Christ, I believe, commanded us to understand the signs of the times. Now, once we accept this premise, this is where Christians start disagreeing. Because the question is then, therefore, how do we proceed from here? If you look at the New Testament epistles, we're doing one right now, Romans, for a Bible study. Paul spends much of his time in these epistles laying down ground rules for what it means to navigate a negative world. What does it mean? Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar. What's rendered unto him? What's rendered under God? Well, what about all the stuff that's in between? That's not really a lot of things. So what about all the stuff that's in between? Who are we rendering that to? There are a lot of debates about that, okay? And sometimes Paul, by the way, just referees the debates. Doesn't even necessarily take a side. He referees it. Now, the Reformers differed on these things too. Almost immediately during the Reformation, a group called the Anabaptists emerged. And they came to the conclusion that there's no way to engage the world without getting the stain of the world on themselves. And so they kind of created a Protestant monasticism. These are traditions like Mennonites, Quakers, Amish. Okay, they've retreated from the larger world to avoid being stained by it. In gray areas, or areas where the Bible does not specifically address things, and voting is one of them, by the way. There is very little voting in the Bible, and almost every example of it is bad. Some of you will say, well, the disciples cast lots to replace Judas. That's not the same as voting. Again, this is where you need to know the context, okay? The disciples were all Jewish. The Jews believed that the Lord controlled the casting of lots. And so casting lots was not to express the will of the people, but to discern the will of God. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. They cast lots to see what God thought. When we vote as an expression of what we think, what we believe. That's not the same as the casting of lots. It's not the same at all. There's very little voting in the Bible, and most of it is bad, like give us Barabbas. So we're in a real gray area here. And more than ever, we need each other, folks, more than ever. Doesn't mean we can't argue, disagree vehemently. Doesn't mean people can't get called out. But as much as possible, as Paul's going to say later in Romans, live in peace with everyone as much as you possibly can. We need Christian unity as much as we can get it. And I think the only way we're going to be able to maintain that in a negative world is we're going to have to radically defend one another's rights of conscience. So if you think you can proceed into a sector of the culture without succumbing to it, don't shame those who who disagree and are less convicted with you. If you think you can stand up there last night, for example, at the RNC event when someone's giving a Sikh prayer and you're like, this isn't a real God, it's not a real person. This is a figment of someone's imagination, and in my head, I'll just silently sit here and praise Jesus. Okay. Don't do the Sikh prayer. Don't do that. Paul would say, don't do that. Don't sound out the words yourself. Don't do that, okay? But if you can take part, Harmeet's very gifted and talented at what she does. God gave her some serious giftedness. She's used it for our value system. You want to honor her and applaud her and support her, but don't do her prayer, okay? I've got no problem with that, and neither should anybody else. On the other hand, if you're like, I can't believe they allowed that last night, I'm out, I've got no problem with that. We're going to have to radically defend each other's consciences. And if you're willing to engage something and someone else isn't, it doesn't mean that they have less courage than you or care less than you. And if you're not willing to engage something because you think it goes over the line and someone else is, you're not self-righteously better than them. Or as you said, narcissism isn't a substitute for being principled. By the way, this also explains why I have not heavily invested in the platform fight. You guys know from listening to my show in the early years, I mean, I could do GOP platform tonight. I mean, I could do whole shows for weeks on the GOP platform. Okay. I was involved in getting people on platform committees, help writing party platform planks. Okay. I mean, then I got a bunch of these people elected and I was like, wait a minute, I'm voting for people that haven't even read this dang thing.
What is it? The Stu Iverson moment?
Yes. The chairman of the party was like, I've not even read the platform you guys came up with, Deace.
Oh,
okay. Well, there's that. All right. To me, all I see is we went from a great platform. I've joked often, the Republican Party platform looks like the Apostles' Creed expresses a political platform. We've gone from this great platform that almost no one adhered to that was loaded with Christian ethics, but almost no one acted on any of it, to this platform of minimal Christian ethics, but the people that are currently in power seem more willing to at least act on the limited scope of Christian ethics than the people who approved the previous platform. Is one better than the other? One worse than? I don't know the answer to that. So to me, that juice isn't worth the squeeze, not worth me getting in the middle, taking strays and handing out shots. If you disagree, I respect that. I respect your conviction. I wish you well. And I hope that, we can work elsewhere in the kingdom. But if you're not understanding that now you're part of a coalition now, you're not calling the shots anywhere in the culture. I mean, we just had an interview with a young lady, God bless her, but her parents probably thought when she came home and said, treat me as a boy, they're not even calling the shots in their own house right now, let alone in the broader culture. You see what I'm saying? We're not calling the shots. And that means we have to live in the world as it is. Now, the challenge is we can't violate God's word at the same time. And so how far can we go with that? We're going to disagree. There are times people are going to go too far and sell out. They need to be rebuked. There are going to be times that people won't go far enough and they'll let evil flourish as a result. They need to be rebuked. You see what I'm saying? We're going to have to play this man case by case, instant by instance. All of us are as believers. Otherwise, long before we can even pray for revival, we are going to turn on one another and finish off what is left of this culture. Let me pause there so that Todd and Aaron have time to gather their thoughts as I tell you about this new book, Full-Time Work and the Meaning of Life. New book by David Bahnsen, because we were created to work. And our work provides unique meaning and purpose for our lives. Those talents and skills are there to glorify God, to have his name proclaimed in his creation and among those that he created so that they may know us even by our works, good works, all right, that stem from the faith and the talents that he puts in us. It's a good thing to have fruitful labor. The Protestant work ethic is one of the things, Todd would even tell you that as a Catholic, that built America. No problem with getting back to that. And that's what David Bahnsen's book is all about. If you want to get a copy of it for yourself right now, go to fulltimebook.com. Visit fulltimebook.com. Again, it's called Full-Time Work and the Meaning of Life by David Bahnsen, available at fulltimework.com.
Full-Time Book.
Oh, did I say Full-Time Book? I'm sorry. Fulltimebook.com is what I thought I was saying, but I just had a Joe Biden moment. Fulltimebook.com, fulltimebook.com. All right, gentlemen, your thoughts.
Well, I didn't necessarily expect anything on day one simply because Trump was almost assassinated. An entire parting of the clouds. So I sit down and watch that convention, and I was watching. I wasn't watching just a live stream of nothing but convention. I wanted to watch CNN and MSNBC and see how they navigated their hatred for Trump and wishing he was dead to the fact that they had to try to look like human beings. So I missed parts. But I do know this. I was so bored by what I saw. So bored. And it was plastic and wooden. Even after what happened, I got up and started washing the dishes. And then my wife and my daughters are watching, and Amber Rose comes on. And I had... Steve, we agree. We haven't even heard of Amber Rose until a couple of weeks ago.
I had never heard her name
of
once.
this, okay?
Yeah.
And I didn't hear her introduced, but my girls say, yeah, I heard about this girl or something like that. So I come off and watch her and say, who is this? And I think this Amber Rose. I said, that's her? And so I listen. And I know about her background and everything, but if you're being honest with yourself and you heard that speech and how she delivered it, and you don't have to agree with every word, but if you set the past of everybody aside, I said out loud, I said, that's the best speech of the night. And if that's true, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? That's a problem. And by the way this is being advertised about Harmeet, not mentioning, oh yeah, she was almost the RNC chair, just in an island, she said a prayer, a Sikh prayer. Nobody's mentioning that there were at least, I had to go back and count because I missed them all. There were at least 3 Christian prayers there last night. Now again, we can argue on both fronts if these are problems, but I think you're missing the greater problem, and it speaks exactly to what Steve is saying. When we were in the majority, we had our chances, and we pulled our punches, and we compromised, and we gave, and we gave, and we gave. How in the hell are you surprised that it looks like this now? Mm-hmm. You can either have the New York that is the way it is right now, and that's what you're going to get at the Democrat National Convention, or you can get the New York of Donald Trump, which is basically the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And again, that's not Christian Valhalla. I get it. But I think also, again, if we're being honest with yourself, there's no way I'd let my kid go to college in the state of New York anywhere these days. I would have let my kid go to college in the state of New York back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. In the immediate aftermath of Donald Trump already getting assassinated, did you see in Milwaukee? Protesters. There's no off button with them. Showing up. Marching. That's the level of evil we're up against. So I don't even know. People are acting. Christians are acting like they're confused that yesterday is the reality we live in. That's not being wise as serpents. And I'm sorry, Aaron, I went on too long.
You're good. That was great.
Aaron, I'll let you have your take when we come back here in a minute. And then there's something else I want to bring up. You guys may have to save me from myself. All right? Stay tuned. Best-selling Eden Pure Thunderstorm Air Purifier uses proven Oxy technology that quickly destroys the components causing the bad odors in your home. It's not a freshener, it's a purifier. It gets right after, whether it's the bacteria, the mildew, the BO, cigarette smoke, whatever it is that's causing those bad odors in your home, it goes right after it, and it does the job, which is why so many of you have given it rave reviews since they came on board a few years ago, why they have thousands of 5-star reviews online. So get the 3-pack right now for whole home protection. Put one on every level of your home, or if you've got a split level or a ranch, you put it on a couple of levels, maybe save one for the garage. You'll save $200 on the 3-pack right now when you go to EdenPureDeals.com. Eden, just like it sounds, the place we got kicked out of. All right. EdenPureDeals.com, discount code Steve3 to get those big savings on the 3-pack. EdenPureDeals.com, discount code Steve3. All right, so Aaron, I want to give you a chance to chime in here as we're finishing up this first part of Idolatry or Not. And if I could sum it all up in one sentence, It's basically what I'm trying to say here is we're in America right now still. We can still mostly speak freely, still mostly travel freely, still mostly believe freely when we used to be totally able to do those things. We're now down to mostly. So it still looks like America. We're in America, but we're not of America. Okay? The belief system that founded America now is no longer in the driver's seat here, if that makes sense. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just as it pertains, and I'm speaking for myself here, maybe this will resonate with others, especially those who have worked in activist circles and have put great effort, great expense into political action. Maybe probably even more than I have, maybe some of you listening. I think it's kind of the relationship that right America, conservative, whatever the heck that means, people who actually believe and understand and are able to articulate the founding ideals of this country and believe that conservatism is not the conservation of institutions that hate us, but conservatism is the conservation of ideals that have proven themselves to work for what's best for human nature over the course of history. That type of conservatism. The relationship with the Republican Party is kind of akin to a parent who kind of has to let an adult child go. For years and years and years, they put their blood, sweat, and tears into that child, tried to teach them the way that they should go, try to infuse the values that they believed into that child, and for whatever reason, it's just not working. You don't completely cut that child out of your life, but you do kind of have to let them go at some point. You do kind of have to let them go. You pray for the best, prepare for the worst, whatever that may be. That's kind of where I am with the Republican Party right now. And I think that's kind of an offshoot a little bit of the conversation that you just had, Steve.
I just saw something somebody tweeted at me that is a perfect example of what not to do. Okay? So before we move on, can I use this example? The Republican Party and its platform embraced abortion and pride. Real Christians need to use the fourth line on the ballot. Pray for who to vote for. Right now we have a uniparty. Okay. This is new. The uniparty, you woke up 5 days ago, 5 minutes ago. It's new. Does somebody know what was this conservative Valhalla before Trump? I mean, did I not do all those shows all those years? Like, what the hell is George W. Bush doing? Why are we growing government? What is race to the top? What is Common Core? I mean, what's McCain, Kennedy, amnesty bills? Yeah. What is did that stuff not happen? Did we just all wake up? Did America start when Donald Trump came down an escalator? There was no Earth. There was no America before this. Now, along the lines of what I just said, if it is true that on some level the Republican Party has absolutely embraced abortion and the rainbow jihad, let's not
correct.
I mean, let's not lie to each other here. We don't tolerate any gaslighting of the brethren on the show. Okay, that's absolutely true. It is somewhat new, Todd, that they codified it into the platform in ways they have not before, even though they were more than winking at, nodding at it for several years before this event. So I'll give some people some grace that maybe the fact that it's actually in written form now is an official decree of the party is something that's new. Fair.
It's new, but it's new because they can get away with not lying anymore.
Correct. It wasn't that they just started thinking this.
No.
Yeah, this is a codification of what they've long been thinking. Okay. Let me say this very plainly. If that is your out, God bless you.
Fine. Yep.
No argument. It's absolutely legit. Absolutely legit. But he doesn't stop here. He then goes on to say, real Christian, no, don't do that.
There's a lot of that going around.
Yeah, a real Christian is not determined by what they think of. Well, that's what's destroying the Southern Baptist Convention. What's your view of Donald Trump, Beth Moore? What's your view of Donald Trump on the other side? Trump is a Lord. No, don't do that. Donald Trump is no plumb line to determine who real Christians are.
Even Romans 1, bro, we're doing this. Paul goes into the center of the known universe, knows all the paganism is there, and he says, I can work with this. Yes. Christ is king. and he goes to work.
Yes.
Real Christians, you're taking on Paul, brother. You comfortable with that?
Real Christians might be like, I can't stand Trump sometimes, but he's not going to put the brethren in prison, which is what Joe Biden is trying to do. So I think it would be real cool to not have my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ go to prison for what they believe. So I'm going to vote for him. If for no other reason, then maybe he's Darius, okay? And he lets us actually live in the Holy Land. You see what I'm saying? He's used as a metaphor. There's lots. Don't do that. You're not a real Christian if you stood up there last night and applauded Harmeet Dillon for being an outstanding public servant, which until she prayed last night, we all agreed she was. You and I were just talking about that during the break,
Yes.
Todd. No one prior to last night's Seek Prayer had any complaints about Harmeet Dillon's capabilities as a public servant. Nobody did. In fact, many of us, myself included, admired her from afar. All right? So don't do the Seek Prayer. Don't say, well, because I admire Harmeet and her capabilities, I'll pray to whatever realm or don't do that. Don't do that. Okay, don't do that. On the other hand, don't be like, if you even watched that last night and clapped after she was done, if you stood there and didn't storm the gates like the Maccabees stormed the temple when Antiochus Epiphanes slaughtered the pig, you're a fraud. Don't do that either. We're in a negative world. We're going to need one another. And there are, as Augustine observed 2,000 years ago, there are many sheep without, but many wolves within. There are many wolves that we're going to need to take out because a good pastor feeds the sheep and shoots the wolves. Let's not shoot the sheep. Fair. Let's not do that.
We're going to find out.
Well, on our show, and again, just like I said to my friend Shannon Joy on her show last week, how bad do you think I think it is, and I think it could get, that prior to even his near assassination, I was desperate for Trump to win? And by the way, 4 days ago, the three guys on this show who go to war with each other every day didn't even agree on that. Okay. All right. So I said to Shannon, how bad do you think I think it is that I think we're desperate for Trump to win? Doesn't mean you have to agree with me, but ask yourself, how bad do I think it is that I'm like, this guy I've got 15 problems with, better win or we might be screwed. Fair? Okay. You need to ask yourself, can I do this without staining my testimony? And then number two, can I extend grace to those who disagree? How bad must it be that I am now the one saying grace and unity, folks? That's not necessarily, if we're being honest, those have not been the lead pitch points of this program since I started it 18 years ago.
No.
Doesn't mean they were non-existent, but they weren't kind of at the focal point. Taking out the trash was. Well, in a negative world, we need one another because I still thought we were in a positive world. And so when you're in a positive world, it's much more about taking out your own trash. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When you're in a negative world, it's much more now about survival. We good now?
Yeah.
To move on? Aaron,
Yeah.
you okay to move on?
Yes.
Okay. Before we do that, a word about our friends over at the Freedom Chamber. If you are a pro-American business owner, you are not alone. The Freedom Chamber is open for business. I did a call with these guys a few weeks ago. Man, they are fired up. Fired up to help build the parallel economy that can allow us. One way you move into a positive world is you build a parallel economy. So you don't have to keep funneling the money you're making into the institutions and entities and endeavors who hate you. So if you have a small or medium business, they want to help you make your voice heard. They've got exclusive benefits to help business owners grow and protect their business by building a future rooted in faith, family, and freedom. So don't sit on the sidelines any longer. Unite, like we were just talking about, our voices to fight back with strength in numbers. It's the Pro-American Business Network. Join today at freedomchamber.net. Again, that's freedomchamber.net. And the Freedom Chamber is a dynamic, innovative organization established to empower American businesses across all sectors. So if you want to help them build the parallel economy around faith, family, and freedom, you want to go to freedomchamber.net. That's freedomchamber.net. Okay. Part 2 of Idolatry or Not. And this is now where I need you guys to check me, I think. Or maybe. I'm just going to say maybe. Earlier this year, I joked on this show that if Donald Trump really was able to dodge not only his own historically low negatives, but I think it was 94 was the number, 94 potential felony convictions, and be elected president of the United States, I'm going to start believing he's God's anointed. I was joking. Mainly because it was something I thought had no chance of occurring. But then I've lived through the last 19 days. And these last 19 days have seen the following in chronological order. The earliest presidential debate in American history, which was asked for by his opponents asked for it, that resulted in all of America being exposed to his opponent's biggest weakness, the dementia of President Biden, and that his administration and the media have conspired for years to hide it. Next event. That exact same debate, which again was asked for by his opponents. Trump had no leverage to ask for anything. He's trying to stay out of jail in New York. They came to him. So this debate, which his opponents asked for, ignited a still ongoing and unforeseen Democrat civil war within the opposition party none of us would have predicted. Next, he got a verdict at the Supreme Court on immunity. He didn't get necessarily what he wanted, but it got enough to at least stall their attempts to try him in the D.C. gulag and put him in prison there for J 6th. Next, he had his possible prison sentencing in Manhattan postponed on July 11th. Then, 2 days later, he survived a literal near-death experience by mere centimeters. And again, I got to tell you, man, yeah, there were several things at that convention last night I'm not a fan of. But the dude code, when the dude walks down the hall, guys, like he owns, solemnly, but like he owns the joint with that bandage over his ear. Come on, man. That was pretty badass. That was pretty badass. All right. So he survived a literal near-death experience by mere centimeters on Saturday. Then on Monday, in a move literally no one saw coming. No one did. Like most of these other things, no one saw coming. Okay, this wasn't even being discussed. You go find the most positive, Trump is great, gave us some chocolate cake, tiptoes between the raindrops show. They were not discussing that this was going to happen or even predicting it. Nothing. This wasn't even on anybody's radar. Out of nowhere, Judge Eileen Cannon down there in Miami, in the one case that even several conservative legal experts were concerned about in terms of having legitimacy against Trump, just abruptly dismissed the case. Dude. This is the greatest run of random political luck in human history. Nothing's ever happened like this. Or what do you think, guys?
Or what, Steve?
Yeah.
Or what, Steve?
Yes. Listen.
Or I walked into that house in suburban Long Island and I saw Kris Kringle's cane sitting over there by the fireplace. Or that. You see what I'm saying? Or that.
What's
okay?
more impressive in terms of a string of luck? Kamala Harris going from Montel's side piece to within an eyelash of the presidency.
Now, she worked hard for that, if we're being honest. She worked hard for that. Okay? She didn't catch strays. She went looking for them, brother. She worked hard for that. But I hear you. Go ahead, Todd.
So here's the crucial point about that. When God's anointing comes down upon a person, is that supposed to be the occasion to start an entirely new religion?
No, that's a key point. Yes.
It's always about to point back to the very same God that gave all the other anointings. Yep. And this is crucial. And this is very, very sobering, because if you are right, it is likelihood that God is telling you, yes, I'm anointing this knucklehead of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And you should read that.
He's anointed plenty of knuckleheads, guys, if you read the scriptures,
yes.
okay?
You should read that in two ways. That means I want all of you. Yes, all of you. And 2, if you do not take this one seriously, this might be your last chance.
In other words, how far down the draft order does God have to do before he gets to a guy named Gideon who's literally hiding indoors from the enemy and openly admits he's a coward when he calls him forth as mighty man, right? How far down the draft board does he have to get? Is that what you're saying?
Where would you yet be struck?
How far down the draft board does God have to get to give a kid born to a 15-year-old mom in white trash America, the platform that I have? See what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so, yes, now if he's using OnlyFans model and Harmeet Dillon of the religion Sikh and not you, ask yourself why.
That'll preach.
I don't think it's that controversial to say, in the sense that in the anointing, appointing sense, that every leader, God appointed Joe Biden. Does anybody disagree with that? God is the one who is in control. He is the one who raises up leaders, even wicked ones. I don't think that's up for debate.
Biblically, it's not.
Biblically.
A lot of believers don't understand that. Yeah. They would not know that Calvin allows wicked rulers in order to judge. As Calvin pointed out, God allows wicked rulers to judge his people. Yes.
I'm just going to say, as it stands today on July 16th, this is one heck of a string of luck. I'm just going to leave it at that. Say nothing else.
And that's from the cessationist on the stage, guys. Romans 8:28.